we are going to check different problems that normally you have with generators. In my experience, close to 30 years of experience with the generators, those are the most common complaints. The number one is the generator crank, but no start. That's number one. The second one is the generator start, but stop suddenly. Other one is the generator is running, stop suddenly, and the code in the computer is low frequency. Other one is the same, but the code is high frequency. Other common problem is the generator is running, but the voltage is low in both phases. It's not too much. It's around 97 volts, 100 volts in both phases. The generator, other problem is the generator is running, but in one phase I have 180 volts, and in the other phase 60 volts. Too high in one, too low in the other one. Other one is the generator is running, but stop suddenly, and the code in the computer is high load. All right, we are going to analyze those very common problems and how is the procedure to solve it. Right? Okay, guys. Don't forget, guys, that the generator is divided in two parts. One part is the engine with the fuel tank, with the fuel pump, with the fuel injection pump if the generator is diesel. And this is the engine. And the other part of the generator is the back end with the rotor, the stator, the breaker. This is the back end of the generator. You need to identify the complaint of the customer is related with the engine, or the complaint of the engine is related with the back end. In other words, the complaint of the customer is about the engine is a DC problem. The complaint of the customer is about the AC current problem with the phases, with the AC, with the output, is a problem in the back end. And you divided the problem. You remember some classes ago when I explained in chapter 8 this slide related with the harness, how to create the harness for a diesel or gasoline engine. You remember? We are going to check quickly. We connect the ignition switch, stop, run or preheat and start, the crank relay, the start motor, the start relay, run relay, stop relay, the fuel injection pump, the alternator, the hour meter, the tachometer, the oil pressure gauge, the fuel pressure gauge, the temperature. That was your project. You remember in the previous class in DC current. You create this wiring, and this is the harness. This is the harness of the engine. The harness of the engine is totally AC or DC? It's DC. You have AC current in that harness? No. No?
Tachometer signal?
Oh, the tachometer signal, but this is the small output, AC output produced for the alternator enter in the tachometer. But this is not considered AC current. No, it's not considered AC current wiring. It's a DC wiring. Good? Okay. For example, in the first one, the engine crank, but no start. The engine crank, but no start. Where is focused that problem?
The fuel.
The engine or the back end? Look at this. The engine is here and the back end is here. This is a diesel generator. In this gasoline generator, this is the engine and this is the back end. In the back end, I have the control box with the start, stop, the hour meter, the output breaker, some fuses for battery, for harness, and the voltage regulator. This is the back end. When I try to start the generator, I try to start what? The back end or the engine? The engine. Follow me. When immediately the engine starts and continue running at operational RPMs, Now the generator starts to produce current. At the beginning, when the engine is cranking, the generator is not producing power. The generator starts to produce once the engine reaches the operational RPMs. That's clear? All right, for that reason, I am cranking the generator here, cranking, and no start. Is a problem, is an electrical problem? No. In general, no. It's a mechanical problem. Where could be located that problem? Fuel, filters clogged, Baker Parker filter with a lot of water, other possibility, problem with the ignition system. If the generator is gasoline like this, you need verify a spark. You need check what happened with the engine. If the engine is diesel, probably air in the fuel. You need bleed the system, eliminate the air. Mechanical problems, probably the air filter is clogged, no? Mechanical issues. You remember, my friends, that you have one button, start, other stop, and preheat. You remember, preheat? Yeah. You remember what is the function of preheat in diesel engines, in diesel generators, in those type of generators?
That's the signal.
Is to preheat with the glove plugs the combustion chamber. Once the fuel enters, ignite easily. That's in diesel. Later in the course of diesel, we are going to talk about that. This is preheat. But in gasoline, you have a similar issue with preheat. But the preheat bring the fuel with that low pressure pump and bring the fuel into the carburetor, in this particular case, because it's carbureted. If the engine is fuel injected, the low pressure pump or transfer pump bring the fuel from the fuel tank into the high pressure pump to the injectors. Now, this is the function of the preheat. And you hear that pump when you activate preheat or ignition position. You remember that? Yeah, this is DC. This is DC. All of those elements, the fuel transfer pump, the solenoid, all of those are DC. For that reason, it's important verify the engine crank but no start. Check those fuses. Those fuses are DC. Those fuses are DC. This is for the voltage regulator. This is for the battery charger. Yeah. This is for the harness. You verify fuse by fuse. Probably one of the fuse is broken. Yeah. For that reason, those three fuses are critical. Let me explain something before I continue, because it's a lot of topic that I explain with more details in the videos. We are going to analyze, number one, the diesel engine. The fuel enters from the fuel transfer pump. That pump. The fuel transfer pump suction the fuel from the fuel tank and bring the fuel, and the fuel pass through the fuel filter, and after the fuel filter pass for other secondary pump. This is the priming pump, and after that the fuel enter here in the fuel injection pump. Enter in the middle, and after that goes to each injector. The fuel enter in the fuel injection pump only if this solenoid allow that the fuel enter. If this solenoid is closed, what happened? No fuel, and the engine no start. That solenoid is used also for a stop. When you remove the power in that solenoid, the engine stops suddenly, immediately. You remember when you preheat? When you preheat, you bring power for the crank relay. You remember that picture? The crank relay, and the crank relay allow that the current enter in the start motor and the engine crank. And additionally, when you preheat, you supply power for this transfer pump. You bring the fuel, and you supply power for the solenoid open, and the fuel enter, and the engine start. You remember when you have the button preheat pressed, and you continue with that button pressed for 10 seconds until what? Because if you remove your finger over there in that button preheat, the engine stop. You need wait a little other 10 seconds for what? Because if you remove your finger, the engine shut down. What happens if you remove your fingers of preheat? You don't have power in the crank relay, you don't have power in this solenoid, the engine stops. Yes or not? You need, again, put it back your finger, and the engine continue running because you open again the solenoid. You understand? How can you eliminate that? Or you need to stay with a preheat 10 hours. No, you need go to drive the boat, no?
I remember that you hold it for like 10 seconds and
Until what? Until what? Until the alternator send the power. You remember that cable with a diode here? Look, this is the purple cable from preheat.
So
when you remove your finger here, it's because the alternator is sending power here, and the power continue with the fuel pump, solenoid, and blah 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 blah. You preheat that button for two purposes. One purpose for preheat, the glove box, it is diesel, and other purpose to bring fuel with fuel injection pump and solenoid. That's okay?
Okay.
For two purposes. When you remove your finger, Mr. Garfield,
Yeah.
you don't have glove plug because you don't need. You produce the first explosion and you don't need more glove plugs. And right now, you can remove the fingers because the alternator is sending power to the relay, and the current continue into the solenoid and continue into the transfer pump. Bingo! That's the function. Okay, guys, pay attention. One important thing. That's the fuel injection pump in diesel. There are gasoline generators. In gasoline generators, I have a carburetor instead of fuel injection pump. You remember that? Later, in the course of gas and diesel, we are going to study with a lot of details both engines. Okay, in this generator, in this one, in diesel, you start and stop when you interrupt that solenoid. You remember? The fuel enter or no enter. In this generator, carbureted, you can start and stop the generator when you interrupt this solenoid. This is the idle solenoid. You disconnect the power in the idle solenoid, and what happened with the fuel entering in the carburetor? That solenoid closed and no more fuel enter. That solenoid, the idle, have the same function that the solenoid here at the input of the fuel injection pump in diesel. Allow that the fuel enter or no enter, and the engine start or stop. This solenoid is used here for that purpose. You understand, guys? It's clear? This is the idle solenoid in a carbureted gasoline generator. And you have a transfer pump. This is the transfer pump, 12 volts transfer pump, and that transfer pump brings the fuel from the fuel tank. Okay? Excuse me. The engine is cranking. Start, but immediately I remove the key, the engine stop. Where is the problem in this gasoline engine? The engine start. When I remove my finger, immediately the engine stops. You need to verify if when you remove your finger, the current here in this solenoid is interrupted. How can you do that? You disconnect here and you bring direct current directly over there. And now start and continue running. Because I connect directly with an alligator cable, red color here. And I have constant power. In the harness, in some part is interrupted. The current coming, what is the current that is coming here to keep the generator running? From what point is coming when I remove my fingers? From the alternator. And you remember that in the output of the alternator you have one diode over there. What is the function of that diode? When you preheat, it's no good idea that you introduce current here in the output of the alternator. For that reason you have that diode. This is the diode. This is the diode here. Look at the diode. You have a diode, and the diode control that you have constant power here. When the engine is running, the alternator here of the gasoline engine send power, and the solenoid stay open and the generator continue running.